May we share a word of prayer together. Holy One, may the words of my mouth, the meditations of all our hearts be pleasing and strengthening to you, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, at first service this morning, I discovered, as worship was beginning, that Buck Arnhold was out in the parking lot with a painting showing people as they arrived to church, and the painting was of me as Han Solo and Chuck as Chewbacca. And so people were being welcomed into worship with this painting, which I thought was really, and it's, I think, now in Friends Hall, but Buck is kind of a mischievous spirit, but it's kind of keeping it. It was just really a fun way to know this thing was going on as people entered in and had seen this picture as they came in. The Star Wars series has been fun for me. After the sermon this morning, I had at least 3 or 4 people say, I knew you loved Star Wars. I didn't know you were that much of a geek related to Star Wars until after today. So you'll be introduced to a host of characters today. You may or may not know. You may not have seen any of the films, and we'll just kind of see how all this goes. But one of the things I do know about the Star Wars universe is you're introduced to so many different human beings and creatures and beings from other planets. One of the mesmerizing pieces is all the work the movie has done to introduce you to this vast array of species and people and beings. It just kind of opens up your mind and imagination. And though, as we watch the films, or if you've watched the films, we typically follow a core group of characters around. Maybe it's Luke and Han and Leia and Chewie and C-3PO, R2-D2. We have a whole series that does that. We have another crop of movies where it's Anakin Skywalker, Ben Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Princess Amidala is another core group. Another group is Finn and Rey and Poe, and we kind of follow behind them and we champion their work of good over evil and fighting off the evil empire or the First Order or whatever the evil is of the time. And so most of our energy is drawn following those particular characters, but we're introduced to far more that have a part to play in the Star Wars universe. One of the ones I think of that most people don't even think about is Sabe. And I was like, who is Sabe? Sabe is in episode 1, and Sabe is a person that follows around Queen Amidala, Princess Amidala, and is a decoy. Her primary role is to confuse people that want to injure Queen Amidala. She is a duplicate, a decoy to go and be in places where there might be danger, and if it looks like it's safe, then they switch roles when it's a safe place to be. And Sabe does that all of episode 1, and in beginning of episode 2, there is more danger. And so Queen Amidala is now, I guess, a senator and is going to the planet of Coruscant, and Sabe is on the ship making their way to that destination. When the ship lands, the ship is blown up and Sabe is killed in that incident. And Sabe makes a sacrifice for a larger peace so that Queen Amidala can continue to live. And her existence becomes really important in the Star Wars universe because we know that Queen Amidala becomes the mother of Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia. And so someone that goes out of the way to protect another person, we sometimes just move on from that character. But Sabe has a really critical role in the Star Wars universe in terms of helping fight good against evil. And then there's a film that's made that's in between episode 3 and episode 4 called Rogue One. And in the kind of the storyline of that particular off film that's in between episodes 3 and 4 is we discover that there is the plans to the evil Death Star, the space station that can take out planets and people and groups of people. And it's in that film we discover that the rebels have an opportunity to get the plans to this Death Star and destroy it. That the primary maker of that Death Star, who actually was a sympathizer to the rebellion, but needed somehow to get that message to the rebellion about this kind of opportunity to destroy the Death Star. And so Galen Erso, who is the engineer behind the Death Star, knows that there's a weakness. He's planted this weakness in the Death Star, needs someone to take that message to the rebellion, and starts talking to an Empire pilot named Bodhi. And we never see that conversation. We get hints of what that conversation was about. And Bodhi said to some of the other rebellion people, Galen told me if I was brave enough and strong enough, I could convey the message and get it to the right people. He had to defect from being an empire pilot and move over and do something for good. It's a hard thing to leave behind a role in which you've been fear-mongered into doing that role and not getting to be yourself. And Bodhi had to overcome the notion of, I'm going to do my duty versus do what I think is the right thing to do on behalf of humanity and society and others. And Bodhi is that pilot that defects, passes over the message, and is able to help convey that message to the rebellion about the good news of a way to destroy this device that's going to be so detrimental to others. And so you have those two characters. And then there's a character we get in episode 5. And that episode's character's name is Lando Calrissian. And some people know who that is from Empire Strikes Back. And Lando Calrissian is kind of the same ilk as Han Solo, kind of a smuggler and a dealer and kind of a sketchy character. But we get introduced to him in episode 5. He is kind of in charge of what's called the City of the Clouds. It's a city that suspends up in the air, up in the clouds. And we first meet Lando. We're not quite sure what to make of this character. Do we trust him? Do we not trust him? He's a friend of Han. Han's kind of sketchy, not sure what to do here. Princess Leia clearly does not trust Lando. What they do not know when they arrive at the City of Clouds is that Lando has already made a deal to turn in the people we're championing to the Empire. And we get disappointed in Lando. And then as the movie progresses, Lando has an opportunity to redeem himself. He put these people in a bad spot, and I think his conscience, something within him says, I think I can do better. And he turns an internal mental corner and decides to do something for good. And he ends up saving Chewie and Leia, C-3PO, R2-D2, and eventually comes back to the City of Clouds and saves Luke Skywalker, who's close to falling to his death below the City of the Clouds, and ends up redeeming himself to save that group of people so they could carry on the fight. And then in episode 6, we're introduced to a whole band of characters that are tiny. They're about this tall. They're furry creatures called Ewoks. And Ewoks seem pretty benign. They just kind of live a simple life with one another. And the rebellion sends a detachment of troops down to this planet because that planet is where the energy shield is protecting the second Death Star that's been created. And so they have to go down, get rid of the energy shield so the rebellion can fight against the second Death Star. So as they go down to do that, the rebellion detachment gets arrested and gets trapped, and they have nowhere to go. Well, they had fortunately befriended these Ewoks that are about this tall. Their advanced weaponry is some hand sticks and a few rocks. And they're going up against blasters and armory and all these mechanisms that the opportunity for them to be defeated is far greater than them winning. But there's so many Ewoks, so many of them, they overcome that battle of Endor and retrieve the rebellion, free them so they can release this energy field so that the rebellion can fight against Death Star number 2. And some people like to maybe make fun of the Ewoks. They're simple, but they play a pretty significant role in episode 6 in terms of the recovery and the ultimate victory of the rebellion. And then you skip over to episode 8, and you get 2 characters in that episode that are pretty important. One is, her name is Rose, and the rebellion at this point, or the resistance, is flying away. It's the last gathering of the rebellion. They're fleeing the First Order, and they're trying to escape. And Finn, who had been a defected stormtrooper who you thought was all in, at the beginning of episode 8, he has second thoughts and says, I'm not sure we're going to survive this. I'm going to get aboard an escape pod and get as far away from this as I can. And he goes down, he loads his backpack and his belongings, he gets all set to get himself an escape pod and jettisons himself off when Rose shows up. Rose is the person that's down in that chamber, making sure no one uses the escape pods to escape. And Rose and Finn have this conversation, and Rose says, "Oh, you're Finn. You're with the Resistance. You're one of us. You're famous." He goes, "Oh, yeah, I'm famous." He's trying to cover up his backpack in the back and not be seen that he's trying to escape. And she ends up tasing him when she realizes he's trying to escape. Well, Rose and Finn end up striking up a friendship with one another. And later in that episode, when they have fled to a planet to try to save the Resistance, Finn and Rose are both in some land ships, and they're fighting against the evil First Order. And Finn decides to push forward, and there's this blaster that's going to open up the door to their protective space. And Finn says, I can do it. He goes, "It's a mission. You won't survive the mission." He says, "I'm going to do it anyways. I don't want the First Order to win." And Rose does not want Finn to die. And so Rose swings her ship around and crashes into Finn's ship so that he will not kill himself in that battle. After that collision, Finn runs over to Rose's ship thinking she might be dead. She's just kind of not with it. And he finally gets Rose's ability to wake up, and she goes and looks at Finn and says, "I saved you. I saved you." Rose knew that the fight was bigger than one person's battle against something evil. It took more than one person to get where you needed to go. And then there's Vice Admiral Hodo, who took over the escaping last bit of the Resistance because Leia is injured and can't lead the command. And so Vice Admiral Hodo takes over, and you're not quite sure about her intentions of what she's doing, but at the very end, she gets everyone off to a safe planet, and she stays behind on the ship and fights against the First Order and directs her ship directly toward the evil First Order ship in order for all the Resistance to escape to a place of safety. She's willing to sacrifice her life for the larger whole of the Resistance and the fight for good and justice in the kingdom that they live in. And then in episode 9, one of my favorite characters is Babu Frick. He's this little guy right here on the table. And that's about how big he is in the movie. And Babu Frick is a guy that works with droids. And there was a scene in which they need I guess it's Rey and Poe and Finn, they need to translate something on a sword that's in Sith language. That's the evil language. There's a message on that sword, and they don't know how to interpret that. Well, C-3PO knows over 6 million forms of communication, looks at that sword and immediately knows and can translate that Sith statement. And they all ask him, "Well, tell us what it says." He goes, "My programming prevents me from speaking in Sith because that's how I'm programmed." They get all mad at C-3PO because he knows the message, but he's programmed not to tell the message. And so someone in their group knows of a being that can somehow reprogram C-3PO to be able to communicate this message. Well, that's Babu Frick. They fly to the planet where Babu Frick is, and he reprograms C-3PO to be able to communicate this message in Sith language to help the rebellion fight the final battle in the best way possible. So you've got Sabe and Bodhi and Lando Calrissian. You got the Ewoks, Rose, Vice Admiral Hodo, and Babu Frick. I mean, most of these characters have short appearances on these films, but they all have significant roles to play. And if you've not seen any of the Star Wars stuff, you're probably thinking, why did I come today? I am so confused. I don't know about any of these characters or any of these episodes or any of this stuff. And partly as I want you to be a little confused, because we often think that the most important person, the person with the greatest skills, the greatest abilities, are the people that we must pay attention to. The people we're called to pay attention to are the ones we give the least attention to that maybe have the best opportunities to make a difference. This passage in Matthew, it concludes with the simple phrase, "Even a cup of cold water is enough." We think that the things we do, we have to make some big splash to make a difference. We have to do something significant to impress somebody. We have to have the right resume, the right education, the right abilities to do something. And the Star Wars universe, and even the words of Jesus tell us, if we have the right heart, if we're brave enough, if we're strong enough, if we do it together, then we can accomplish all the things we want to do. We honor the prophets, we honor the teachers, we honor all the things around us. We do it together. And we have our own forms of resistance in fighting the empire. Sometimes it's a sit-in. Sometimes it's a walkout. Sometimes it's holding up a sign on the street corner, advocating what you think is right, standing up for justice for other people. Sometimes it's filling out a voter encouragement card. And they go, I'm just one card is not going to make a difference. Amy Henricks had us do this last year, and a group of 40, 50 of us did almost 1,000 cards encouraging people to vote. Small little things. Bound together, we do significant impact in our communities. One by one, together, these small little things that seem insignificant, bound together, make a huge difference. We follow these main characters in the Star Wars universe and we cheer them on, but all along we like some of these external figures that are in the films. We don't realize how big of an impact those seemingly external figures have in the final outcome of good over evil, triumph over injustice. When there is a sense that we feel weak and down and depressed, it's our unique small things we bring to the table that change the course of the direction we want to go. I shared in my Facebook post promoting the sermon for today that the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice. And more times than not, we barely see if that arc bends at all. Is it ever going to bend the way we want it to bend? If we're hoping for it to bend, then we have to be part of the bending. Each one of us has our own part to play in bending that arc towards justice. And we may not see the final outcome. All these characters I mentioned today, they knew they were part of a larger story that they may not see its conclusion. But they said it's worth it to be part of this journey because we believe in the end outcome that we're seeking to achieve. There is no task too small. And together, there is never a task too small. May it be so. Amen.